Imagine this: a glittering island surrounded by the bluest waters of the Mediterranean. Capri, a place that still draws travelers today for its beauty. But in the early 1st century, this paradise was not just a retreat. It was a kingdom within a kingdom, ruled by one of Rome's most powerful men, who turned it into a stage for his darkest desires. The Emperor Tiberius, the stepson of Augustus, second ruler of Rome, withdrew here in his later years. To the Senate and the Roman people, he was simply the emperor in retirement. To history, he is remembered as a man who surrounded himself with children and forced them into his private games. What was supposed to be the life of a wise old statesman became instead the story of an old man consumed by appetites he could not control. According to ancient writers like Suetonius, Tiberius brought boys and girls to Capri, keeping them not as honored guests, but as prisoners of luxury. They were dressed, trained, and ordered to act in ways that blurred the line between innocence and corruption. The cliffside palaces and caves of Capri became backdrops for scenes so infamous that whispers of them have survived 2,000 years. This is not just gossip. Roman historians, writing only decades later, collected testimony from those who served him. Some dismissed it as slander, but the pattern is too consistent. The image of an emperor using his absolute power to indulge in what was forbidden. And that is where our journey begins. Tonight, you will walk through the shadows of Capri. You will see how an emperor turned a paradise into a private theater of humiliation. How children were pulled into the orbit of the most powerful man in the world, and how Rome itself looked away. Before we step further into this story, I want to ask you, what do you think? Was Tiberius a victim of history's exaggerations? Or was he truly the monster these accounts describe? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy uncovering the darker corners of history, don't forget to subscribe, because there are many more stories the textbooks never dare to tell. Now, let's step into Capri and watch how an emperor's retreat became one of the most disturbing legends of Rome. When Augustus died in 14 CE, the empire passed to his reluctant heir, Tiberius. He was a soldier, not a showman. Unlike Augustus, who had charmed the people, Tiberius had always been awkward, suspicious, and cold. For a while he ruled well, strengthening Rome's frontiers, stabilizing the treasury, and presenting himself as a stern but capable ruler. But beneath the surface, cracks appeared. Tiberius hated the politics of Rome, the endless flattery, the scheming Senate, the pressure of always pretending to be a man of virtue. In his 50s, weary of the capital and increasingly paranoid, he withdrew from public life. By the year 26th CE, he moved permanently to Capri. On the island, he built villas perched high on cliffs, with sweeping views of the sea. From these palaces, he could watch ships approach long before they arrived, keeping himself secure. The most famous of these was Villa Jovis, a fortress-like residence where Tiberius secluded himself from the world. To the Senate, he claimed age and health forced his retreat. In reality, he was crafting a world where he made the rules. And in that world, the rules bent toward indulgence. Ancient writers say Tiberius filled Capri with performers, entertainers, and, most disturbingly, children. He was said to have boys and girls trained for his amusement, called minnows, because like little fish, they swam around him in the baths, trained to perform obscene acts on command. Whether every detail is true or not, the picture is clear. Tiberius created an island detached from Rome, detached from morality, and detached from restraint. Capri became a sealed stage where his fantasies could be acted out, far from the judgment of ordinary Romans. The emperor had found his refuge, but for the young boys and girls brought here, it was not a retreat. It was captivity, gilded with luxury but chained by obedience. Their lives, recorded only in whispers, remind us that behind every legend of imperial power were human beings, trapped in roles they never chose. Suetonius, writing in the lives of the Caesars, left one of the most scandalous descriptions of Tiberius's life on Capri. He claimed that children were forced to play innocent games with the emperor, games that were anything but innocent. These children, dressed like cupids or mythological figures, were ordered to perform before the old ruler. Some were kept in special chambers, their only purpose to please the emperor in ways that made mockery of their youth. These stories, of course, shocked later readers. Were they exaggerations? Perhaps. But even Roman senators, who often tolerated or ignored the excesses of emperors, seemed to believe that Tiberius had sunk into something deeply shameful. The whispers of Capri were so widespread that later emperors like Caligula were mocked by comparison to him. The details are grotesque, but the pattern matters more. Power had freed Tiberius from consequences. A man who once commanded Rome's armies now commanded children, reshaping their innocence into entertainment. The island became both playground and prison, where laughter was forced and freedom was impossible. While Capri became a stage for his secret life, Rome continued to function without him. The Senate sent envoys, but he rarely answered. Those who fell out of favor could be summoned to the island, only to never return. Tiberius surrounded himself with guards, spies, and astrologers, deepening his paranoia. This isolation magnified his cruelty. Ancient sources describe executions ordered on the island's cliffs, men thrown into the sea while the emperor watched. His appetite for control extended beyond the children in his care. It consumed anyone who threatened his authority. Capri, which should have been a refuge, became a place of dread. Even his own family was not safe. His great-nephew Caligula was summoned to Capri, where he became a silent witness to Tiberius's last years. Imagine the young Caligula, watching the emperor's twisted world, knowing one day he might inherit both the empire and the sins attached to it. In 37 CE, after more than a decade on Capri, Tiberius fell gravely ill. Rumors swirled in Rome. Was he dying naturally, or being smothered by those who could no longer bear him? When news of his death reached the capital, the city erupted in celebration. Few emperors had been so feared, and fewer still so despised. But death did not erase the stories of Capri. They lingered in Rome's memory, whispered by senators, written down by historians, and carried into legend. Tiberius had been a capable general, a stabilizer of the empire, yet his legacy is stained not by victories, but by rumors of cruelty and corruption. Was he truly as depraved as Suetonius describes? Or was he the victim of hostile sources who painted him in the darkest colors? Historians still debate it, but the fact remains. The image of an emperor surrounded by children, trapped in the golden cage of Capri, is one of history's most chilling tales. As you leave this story, ask yourself, what is power without accountability? And how often do rulers, once freed from judgment, reveal not their greatness, but their corruption?